Before we get into this, I want you to think about the last story that actually stayed with you. One that really affected you. One that you couldn't stop turning over in your mind. A film that rewired the way you think and see the world. Okay, are you thinking of it? Now, what made it stick? I think about this a lot because it's literally what I do for a living. Figure out why some stories last and others disappear. I don't think it's luck or charisma or budget or trends or gear or even being clever. As boring as it may sound, I think what makes a good story work is how it's structured. Now, Passenger uses a framework called the story circle. And when you work the story circle, a story develops that feels less like a sequence or litany of events and starts feeling like something authentically true and alive. And that's what I want to talk about today. Welcome to Decoded, an ongoing series where we demystify story and film. My name is Joe Hubers. I'm a filmmaker and the founder of Passenger. I want to show you exactly how we used it on a recent short documentary film we made. It's about Chey Bowers. She's an MMA fighter who's originally from a small town in Minnesota. But her story isn't really about fighting. It's about what happens when someone decides to stop hiding. So let's get into it. Every story has to start somewhere. What I mean is, before we can care about where Chey ends up, we need to understand where she came from. Chey grew up in St. James, Minnesota, population around 4,000. And she was, in her own words, a weird kid, often alone, the youngest of 4 siblings by almost a decade. So in a lot of ways, she grew up watching from the outside of her family. But here's the part that matters. And this is something we push on when we're interviewing people. It's not enough to say, I was different. Lots of people were or are different. But what was the cost of being different? For Chey, the cost was learning to hide. She built this whole interior world, a wild imagination, because it was safer than being seen.
I really learned to kind of hide that weird child that was in me and perform for people, show them what they wanted to see.
That's the baseline. A kid who is brilliant and creative and has learned very early that being fully herself is dangerous. Without that, we don't have much of a story. Step 2. This is where a lot of founder stories go wrong. People are happy to tell you their surface want. I wanted to build a company. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to prove something. And those things might be true, but that's not the story. The story lives in the want that's hiding below the surface. For Chey, the surface want is to be strong, to survive, to prove something to herself. But when you keep digging, you get at something else. She really wants to stop hiding.
It's the release of the darkness that everyone feels they have to hide about themselves.
She wants to be seen. The eating disorder, when you hear her describe it, wasn't really about the food. It was about control.
During that time, I was very much in the mindset of I need to shrink who I am on the inside as well as on the outside.
So Chey's real want is to take up space, to exist without apology or fear. And that's the story. And that's why it resonates with people who never have, never will, and have never dreamed about stepping into an MMA cage. Step 3 is go. This is the door of no return. It's the moment or moments where the character crosses a threshold that can't be taken back. And Chey had 2 of them. The first was hospitalization. She starkly describes it.
It's either this or I die, and I didn't want to die.
This is a forced go. Chey had to be hospitalized because of how dire her health was. But in that moment of crisis, she made a choice. The second door was showing up to jiu-jitsu for the first time. Her husband basically just said, just go.
And he was like, just go to jiu-jitsu. Just do it. I know you're scared, just go. So I showed up, and I just kept showing up.
And I think it's worth pausing here to consider why both of these matter. The first door is survival. The second door is something possibly even harder. It's choosing. It's saying, okay, I made it through, and now I'm going to actively build something different. That's the difference between just surviving a hard thing and transforming because of it. Step 4, search. Navigating the new world. What this step does is shows how the character navigates the unfamiliar territory they've now entered. It's the tactics, failures, the lessons they've learned as they try to make sense of this new path they've embarked on. Chey's search phase is compressed but clear. She says,
it took about 2 months of jiu-jitsu training before I did my first tournament, so not very long. With the pandemic shutting everything down, it took a little bit longer to get to my first MMA fight.
But the real search isn't the timeline, it's the internal navigation.
I don't remember much from my first fight. I know I was almost at the point of puking when we were walking out, and I remember when the ref finally stopped the fight and I had won. And I think that was my first realization of like, I am strong. Like, I just survived a literal fist fight with another person.
She tries something terrifying, and she survives it. She learns something about herself, then she tries something even harder. The search phase is Chey testing her limits, discovering what she's capable of, and learning that strength isn't theoretical. It's something that she can feel and own for herself. Step 5. Here's where the story turns. The character gets what they thought they wanted, and then they realize it's not quite what they expected. Chey became a champion. She won fights, she got strong, and by any external measure, she succeeded. But then she says something that reframes everything.
It's the release of the darkness that everyone feels they have to hide about themselves, and being able to put that out as an art form, for me, is what helps kind of keep the balance, so that when I am on my day-to-day, it's not leaking out and causing issues in my regular life.
That line hits every time, because it cuts to the truth of who she is. Fighting wasn't just about winning. It was about expression, about taking all the parts of herself she'd spent years suppressing, the darkness, the anger, the pain, and giving them somewhere to go, somewhere visible, somewhere controlled. The want wasn't to just be strong, it was to be whole, to stop cutting pieces of herself off just to be acceptable. And that's the fine moment. And when you capture that in someone's story, you know you've got something real. Nothing is free. And that's not pessimism, it's just the reality of how transformation works. It doesn't happen without a cost. And the cost in Chey's story is woven through everything. It's the years of hiding, the eating disorder, and everything it did to her body and her sense of self. It's the hospitalization, the nerve she walks into every fight with, and the ongoing discipline of channeling that darkness into art instead of letting it leak out sideways. The film doesn't try to clean any of this up, and that's a choice we deliberately made. The eating disorder is described in real terms, the fear is real, and it's not presented as something that she just casually overcame and she left behind. So why does that matter? It's because if the transformation didn't cost anything, you don't believe it. You watch it and you think, oh, well, that's nice for her, but you don't think, I recognize something of myself in that. The price is what makes the change both credible and relatable. Step 7 is the return. And this one gets misunderstood a lot. Return doesn't necessarily mean going back to the beginning. It means that the character has changed and they're no longer the person who they were at the start. They return to regular life, but they return carrying everything they've now become. And for Chey, that return is about holding two versions of herself at the same time. The kid who learned to hide and the fighter who is seen. She doesn't just get to leave one behind. She has to figure out how to be both.
The only way out is through. That's gonna make me cry. Just keep pushing, because there is light on the other side.
Notice what she doesn't say. She doesn't say she conquered her demons. She doesn't say she's fixed or wrap a bow on her story. She says she's learning to live with her demons and to move through them. And that journey, that specific, difficult, unglamorous journey made her who she is. That's integration. And that's what the return step is actually about. Step 8, change. The film ends with the ring announcer's voice.
Representing Next Edge Academy, fighting out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota by way of St. James, Minnesota. She is the former LFA interim flyweight world champion, Chey the Boss Bowers.
And that is a good ending. But the title of champion isn't really the point. The point is what's underneath it. Before, Chey was someone who shrank herself, who performed, who hid. And afterwards, though, she is someone who takes up space, who is known, who shows up visibly as herself. All of it, not just the acceptable parts. The kid from St. James, Minnesota who learned to hide has become the fighter who is unabashedly seen. That's the change. And that change only lands because we built towards it all the way back from step 1. So why does this matter for founders? Chey's story is a founder story. She built something. She navigated obstacles, paid real costs, and came out different. The product just happened to be herself. Every founder I've talked to has a version of this arc. Most of them aren't telling it. They're telling the sanitized version, only focused on what they built, what they raised, what they achieved. And that stuff does matter, but it's not what sticks. What sticks is the why underneath it. The moment things became irreversible, the unglamorous middle stretch where nothing was working but you kept tinkering. The thing you realized that changed how you understood the whole journey. That's the story, and that's the version people actually remember. So a few things to take with you. If you're a founder, 1, start before the action starts. Who were you before? What did you have to hide? That's where the stakes live. 2nd, name the real want, not the goal, the need underneath the goal. That's what people actually connect with. 3rd, find your door of no return. The moment that was irreversible, that's when the story really starts to move. 4, and don't skip the middle, don't set it up as and then, and then, and then. Rather, it's a series of interrelated therefore and buts. 5, find the realization. The moment you got what you thought you wanted and understood it was something else. That's your pivot. 6, don't clean up the cost. What did it actually take? What did you lose or give up? That's what makes the change believable. 7, show how you hold both worlds. You don't erase your past, you integrate it. How do you exist now, carrying all of it? 8, end with who you became, not what you achieved. The title is just the evidence, but the transformation, that's the story. Chey's film works because it doesn't feel assembled. It feels true. And the reason I think it feels true is that we didn't start with what she'd accomplished. We started with who she was before any of this happened. A weird kid in Minnesota who learned to hide. And we followed that person all the way through. And that's what the Story Circle does. It finds the architecture that was already there. And that's the work we do here at Passenger. We help founders and organizations understand their own story well enough to tell it honestly. Because honestly told stories are the ones that last. If you're a founder sitting on a version of this, a journey you haven't quite figured out how to tell, that's exactly what we're here for.